All right, we are live here tonight, cities and suburbs. Welcome aboard, of course, interview with the ultimate umpire, Peter K. Welcome aboard here. Yes, NFL theme music, of course. It's totally legal, and yes, it's totally legal banter here.
I'm waiting for the NFL to get a cease and desist order to you, Ken.
You're waiting for what?
Waiting for the NFL to send that cease and desist order.
Oh, yeah, well, hold on a minute. Hello, the NFL is here.
Hey, they are more powerful than the U.S. government, so I would be careful. They have a lot of power.
Well, that's because the U.S. government loves football, I guess,
That is true.
Anything that makes them money, they're there,
That's true.
So it is September the 15th. Welcome aboard here. A video from Cities and Suburbs. And we again, an interview with the umpire, Peter K. Not just umpiring baseball, knows a lot about the city of Worcester particularly. And going to start off with some sports tonight. So, Peter, you're just coming back from umpiring a baseball game that had well, not a curfew, but a natural curfew because you ran out of lighting.
Yep, I love football. It's laid back, and the lack of sunlight. A lot of these fields don't have lights, so I'll happily do an hour and a half for a full salary.
What's that? $30?
70 tonight.
Not bad. I was just
70
joking.
For an hour and a half.
Yeah, I was just joking because as a drummer, I take gigs that go, yeah, I'll do that gig, and then they pay me, and they said they were going to give me $100, but then I get 60. But anyway,
That's why you get paid up front, Ken.
Good thought. I'm going to remember that. You guys, my friends in the bands that now, thank you for the good advice. I will take that. Get paid up front. There you go. Actually, it's funny. Did you heard that guy, the lawyer in Murdoch or whatever, that was paid some guy, a hitman, to kill himself or something? It was a really crazy story, and anyway, you can read in the paper, but his wife and his son were killed, and then he paid this hitman to off him because really shady deals, But if you're going to do that, you make sure it works. But this guy lived. Anyway, I digress.
They say, sometimes fact is more interesting than fiction. See some strange shit out there.
Absolutely, brother. So, yeah, you're coming from Northbridge?
Northbridge, and not Whitensville.
Not Whitensville.
Not Whitensville.
Not Whitensville. Peter?
That's a little inside joke out there, Radio Land.
Better bango. Hey, so do you guys? So what do you think, dude? I was watching and I am listening right now on Sirius Satellite XM Radio. By the way, they are not a sponsor of the show, and
I was going to say that's a product drop right there, Ken. What do you get in a cut?
They'll probably cut that from the video if they catch me. So the Red Sox were tied in the 8th, 3-3 against the Seattle Mariners. So let's get into it real quick. Boston Red Sox, where are they this season? How deep will they go? Will they actually make it to the playoffs? What do you think?
They're saying it's a 5-team race for the last 2 spots. I mean, in the AL. The divisions are pretty much wrapped up at this point, but the wild card is basically Toronto, New York, and Boston. And out of those 3 teams, 2 of them are just in survival mode. They're kind of 2 teams in free fall, and Toronto is just beating the shit out of everybody right now.
They are.
They won again tonight. They just took 2 or 3 from Tampa.
Yep. Yeah.
So
they're actually being I remember listening back in the summer, and I always disagree with all the sports talk analysis, hosts saying that Toronto's the most, talented division team in the league. And actually, I was like, really, but they were actually they turned it on, because I think what happened with those guys is, you have to think, how long did they spend without playing a game at home?
They didn't start at home until after, I want to say it was August.
Right. And before that, they played like 100 and something games, not at home.
Buffalo, they were playing in Buffalo, and they were playing in Dunedin, Florida.
Right, and exactly, and they were holding their own. So maybe they feel like there's something that they, I don't know, maybe something that they have to prove now, to say, hey, we got the shit handed to us, boop, boop, and, we're back at home now, even though there's 12,000 people at the Rogers Center in a stadium that's 89,000 people.
Well, Ken, I will say one thing. I'm a Blue Jays fan, been a Blue Jays fan for a long time, and that there's kind of recency bias there, because the Rogers Center, I still call it the Sky Dome, when that place is packed, and they do pack it when they win, when that place is packed, that place rocks.
Oh, I can imagine.
It is deafening. I mean, you go to YouTube and watch when Jose Bautista hit that home run, that walk-off home run, the go-ahead home run against Texas a couple of years ago. The roof almost blew off. Or even Joe Carter back in '93. It gets deafening in there when they do pack it, and they do pack it when they win.
Yeah, and that's, I know Joe Carter. I remember the 92, 93 Blue Jays back-to-back, I can only imagine, that many people. I mean, it equals actually a really, like a really loud Kansas City Chiefs football stadium, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, so what do you think the Red Sox chances? I don't see it. I mean, I can tell you right now that that the Red Sox, I don't know if they're going to win tonight, but they were tied up. The pitching was just not there, and some positions, the first base position and things like that. So if I look at sports right now, I'm looking at MLB play-by-play. It looks like, wow, it's still 2 out in the bottom of the ninth. It's 3-3. And by the way, Boston and Seattle both have anemic offenses. They're sporadic. But 2 out. No one wants to win this tonight.
Both Seattle and Boston are kind of the same. You look at the deadline, both teams kind of were left on their own. Seattle, I think, did themselves a real disservice at the trade deadline, because they really didn't do much of anything. In fact, they traded their only valuable, one of their better pieces. They traded Ken Graveman. They shipped him in division. Mm-hmm. So, you look at Seattle. Both Seattle and Boston are teams that feel like, the brass didn't do much for them when it came to the trading deadline. The good news for the Red Sox fans is, as much as they're kind of struggling and slumping, the Yankees they not only came back down to earth, they crashed into earth like a meteor. I mean, they are bad right now. They cannot win their way out of a paper bag. Although they do get Baltimore for a 3-set, but they just got swept by the Blue Jays. And in fact, it's the first time they've ever lost a 4-game series and never led at all in a 4-game series since like 1926.
Wow. So is that so? Now you're talking about the Yankees. I never follow the Yankees. I just look at them as the standings, but they did crawl back into second place in the AL East.
They out of the deadline, out of this trading deadline, they get the boosters and they shot right up because they passed a lot of teams. But eventually things kind of even out over a 162 game season, and they came back to earth, possibly because their schedule got a little bit harder. They started playing more of the Tampa Bays, more of the Torontos, more of the Chicagos. So the schedule got a little harder. They started losing games, and they went from being in the first wild card to now, I believe, outside looking in based on percentage points. As of right now.
Well, I could look at the standings. I said, it's a shift between. Let's just face it. Baseball is like all the teams are a wild card. San Francisco clinched a spot today. The LA Dodgers clinched a playoff spot today. They were the first two teams, I think, in both leagues to clinch a playoff spot, not a division winner. We do not have a division winner yet in any of baseball. But, I'm looking at the San Francisco Giants. Oh, my God, they're like almost 50 games over 500. The LA Dodgers are almost 45 games, or are at 45 games over 500. And while that's in season impressive, that doesn't mean crap right after October 4th when the teams and everything's signed, sealed, delivered. People are talking about all these teams, the Yankees, even the Red Sox. No one's talking about Milwaukee. Milwaukee is not a powerhouse as far as offense goes, but they're doing something. And granted, they're playing in the NL Central and trouncing all those guys. And Cincinnati's making a run. And but who the heck knows, man? That's why I like baseball playoffs. It's win or go home.
Exactly. And once the air gets crisp, every one of those pitches, people are watching ever so close, and pitcher starts to get a little bit tight.
Yep.
You start gripping the bat a little bit tighter, and the real guys, the real players come out to play. And I think we'll see. And Tampa Bay is a great example. Last year, honestly, should have won the World Series potentially, but a the system broke down come playoff time.
Well, yeah. They had to give the Dodgers a World Series somehow.
Well, you can ask the Houston Astros about that. I'm sure that they are.
Yeah, well, 60 games, man. Like I said before in our last show, I was like, 60 games. Come on. That's 60 games of 162 in-season games. That's kind of like warm-up baseball, so I don't look at the. I'm not saying the Dodgers did not win the World Series last year, but it certainly wasn't. A 58-year-old old-timer like me, that was like I didn't even watch it. But it's good.
Can I go for you though? Instead of talking about these teams, you want to talk about having a historic season. Baltimore is going to lose probably 120 games.
Oh God!
You want to talk about a historic franchise in one of those picturesque parks in professional sports, and they're probably going to lose 110 to 115 games this year.
Exactly right. I'm looking at it, and it's almost like they're doing it on purpose. When you look at the standings, their last 10, lost 4, 3 out of 7. 7, lost, 7 out of 10. It's almost kind of like, I don't know how can you go to work every day, you're just praying for someone to, maybe hopefully release you and someone like the Red Sox claim you off waivers, and maybe you end up winning a ring,
Well, you want to talk about the potency of the Blue Jays offense. In a 4-game series against Baltimore, Toronto scored 52 runs in 4 games.
Wow.
So you could do the average on that. They took out the whoop-ass stick on them.
Wow. That was that against Baltimore or just against?
That was a 4-game set against Toronto. They just wrapped it up.
Okay.
So yeah, Baltimore sucks. Toronto's good. Boston and New York are in a free fall. So you want my prediction? Toronto will take the number 1 wild card, and I'd say Boston gets the number 2, and Boston probably gets disemboweled up in Toronto.
So who? Okay, not to put you on the spot, but who do you think in baseball right now, given dismissing all the pageantry and who would have thought that the Dodgers in 1988 would have defeated the Oakland A's? But I mean, who do you think has the balance on both sides of the ball and the mental fortitude to actually win the World Series this year in MLB?
I think the Dodgers are your favorite just because they came off a big win last year, and they have the experience. A lot of those guys were on the team last year, and that does help. But again, going back to the AL bias, I mean, Toronto is a team I just would not want to play right now. Again, young players. They did play in the playoffs last year, but they were eliminated by Tampa Bay in 3. But even with that said, they have a little bit of playoff experience, but their pitching is good. They have a dark horse for the Cy Young in Robbie Ray, who is putting together an amazing month. The guy in his last 6 starts has an ERA of just above 2. And he basically crept himself into the AL Cy Young, conversation. And of course, they're just ripping the cover off the ball, and they're playing good teams too. So I would say, LA is a threat based on their recent championship. But I don't know if I really want to play Toronto coming out of the AL right now. I mean, they are just white hot.
They are white hot, and that's exactly the only thing I agree with WEI on was. Toronto, they were a late surge. They dealt with the COVID. Same as the Yankees. They were down for the count in the early season. And the Red Sox from the COVID. And the Red Sox suffered it on the back end. So, it's kind of like, it's really, really sorry music, I mean, that's all we have to say for these guys. Sorry music. Brought to you by the Baltimore Orioles. I'm sorry.
It still is a beautiful stadium. If you get a chance to go down there. But you probably get cheap tickets. It's probably not going to be a good game, though.
No, it probably won't be a good game. But that's okay, man. I definitely will make it down there someday. No doubt about it. But, hey, shifting gears. Sorry, I don't know. For myself, being a Worcester Mass guy. By the way, I was glad to see that the Worcester Pirates took the, Indoor Football League Super Bowl this weekend. I don't know if you had a chance to see it on a re-click on YouTube. They took down the Arizona Rattlers. And I'll tell you, man, the DCU Center needs to fix up their stadium as far as they're gonna, make it really look like a square football, this hockey rink style stadium they have down there. But that being said, the Mass Pirates on the road defeated the Arizona Rattlers for the Indoor Football League Super Bowl this weekend, and you can go watch it on YouTube. And actually, it was the commentary. It was a really good, fun game to watch. It was, so I don't know if you catch any of that, but that's just a little information for you. I really enjoyed it,
Yeah, I mean, the Duck Boat Parade down Main Street.
The what?
Okay, we can have a Duck Boat Parade down Main Street.
Oh, Wormtown. We can have all the worms jumping out of the duck boats.
I only went to one of those games, and it was like 2 years ago, and it was okay. I was pretty toasted at the time. I had a few adult beverages, so everything was pretty much groovy at the point. But the game seemed a little slower than I thought it would be. But that could be the alcohol. It could make me have Matrix-like reflexes. So actually, the world's slowing down.
but they actually switched. They actually switched leagues this year, and they changed some things up. So it was. I watched every live game I could on YouTube, which I love the internet. I thought the tickets for the Massachusetts Pirates, which the only knock I have on the Massachusetts Pirates broadcasters are, or the network that broadcasts them, they always show the Boston skyline, and I know you said that about the Red Sox. We don't have a skyline, but they play in Worcester, you know. But they call them the Massachusetts Pirates, and I have a problem with that whole state thing, like the Arizona Cardinals, and you know, I mean, you know, the Arizona Diamondbacks. You know, call them the city that you're playing in. You know, call them friggin' Phoenix Diamondbacks. You know.
So we're having the Foxborough Patriots now.
Yeah, I know exactly right. Right, exactly. Maybe that's what it's all about. But you know, Foxborough Patriots. Yeah, where's Foxborough? Well, whenever the announcers come on, they say, "Welcome back to Foxborough, Massachusetts, home of the New England Patriots," and then they show the Boston skyline. I guess as a Worcester guy, I get a little pissed off about that because Worcester's really, you know, busted their ass over the last many years to say, we are here, we have the minor league AAA affiliate of the Red Sox here in Worcester, and regardless of whatever, Worcester is moving on. And so bringing it back here, I was really disappointed. I'm reading today in the Telegram and Gazette, or the TNG, which I call the TMP, which the Telegram and Gazette, by the way, and I will go on record and say there you go. It is an endangered species.
I ran off the road just for you on that one. I hit the strip just for you for a sound effect.
Thank you. So what is going on? So all of a sudden in our Worcester Public Schools, which, you know, a city like Worcester that wants to grow, that needs to grow, has a responsibility to grow within the area as an economic hub, by the way, which means if you want to attract families to live here, you have to have a good school system. And it seems like every 3, 4, 5, 6 years, we get into this, you know, superintendent thing. Now, the superintendent of public schools in any school district, they're the CEO, right? They're the ones responsible for the budgeting, the making sure that people are being onboarded, the right people are being onboarded on the bus right now, right? So,
right, sort of. There are no bus drivers, but yes. We have the National Guard because there are no bus drivers.
Well, that hasn't hit Worcester yet. That's, you know, in some of the North Shore cities, but 90, that could be, that's not necessarily a Worcester issue, but it's certainly an issue related to, I spoke with a bus driver that works for the Worcester Public Schools, and the dude's trying to retire, and they keep beeping and saying, do you want to take extra shifts? So, National Guard bus driver coming to Worcester near you soon, right? So, what do you think of the current superintendent and Worcester all of a sudden settling on they are not going to renew Maureen Benendez's contract, all right, for the Worcester Public Schools. I do want to say that today I was looking in the Worcester TMP. It said Tracy O'Connell Novak, who is also sitting on the search committee for a new superintendent. This is, I quote, she drew scrutiny by saying she didn't think anyone currently in the school system, school parentheses, she didn't say that, but she said currently anyone in the system, she didn't think anyone currently in the Worcester school system would be qualified to take that job. Okay, and then members were outraged. Roger Nugent said it is completely inaccurate. We have many talented and hardworking people in the district who could run the system. All right, so we get into the good old boy network of Worcester. So Worcester's growing, and we still got this village, small town, mentality. So it comes down to A, what does the superintendent of schools actually do? Okay, and B, how does that actually directly affect the quality of education that students are getting?
Right. Well, there are actually a lot of scholarly articles that do actually bring up the question of if a superintendent is even a necessary thing to have for a school district.
Exactly right. Exactly. I don't think there was a Department of Education until Jimmy Carter was president of the United States in the 70s. He's the one that actually, I believe, and please comment below if I'm wrong. I may be wrong, but I
like and share. Remember, we gotta like and share.
Yeah, exactly right. But I think people even back then said, "Why do we need a Department of Education on a federal level?" But I'll let you go. I digress.
I mean, my opinion on the superintendent is still, I think it's a necessary evil. I'm not totally infatuated with the position. I think it brings a lot of bureaucracy in a best case scenario, but it does at the same time. It does level the playing field across districts, where it does uniform schools, so that Massachusetts schools are relatively uniform generally in the way they're teaching, hiring, and onboarding, as opposed to kind of everybody kind of going at it, from just every school, every city, every school making its own decisions. So the superintendent, I'm not enamored with the position. I think it's something that can be phased out, but as of right now, it's a necessary evil because we've had it for so long, and it's something that would take a while to get rid of. But it's the same thing as like the Worcester, the county sheriffs. I would have no problem getting rid of county sheriffs in Massachusetts, just like I would have no problem at some point phasing out superintendents. But like you said, the superintendent's basically the CEO of the public school system.
That's exactly right. Yep.
And they're in charge of, amongst other things, negotiating contracts with the teachers. They're, as kids, I remember with Superintendent Garvey calling school days in Stowe. Always looking forward to his trigger finger on that. He was very, very gracious with giving us time off as a kid, or so I remember. But going back to it, Maureen, I think, has done generally a good job.
I agree. I think so too. Especially, Belinda Boone before her. I believe she was from Virginia. They did the nationwide search. Was it Virginia?
Yeah, Norfolk, Virginia.
Norfolk, Virginia, and she actually came to Genesis Club and had a tour early on in her tenure. And from that, she kind of endeared me, because obviously that's where I work, obviously, 40 plus a week. And but she wanted to understand mental health. And it's interesting, you take people out of their original, out of their origin, if you will, out of their element. And she was very forthcoming in terms of her experiences, not personally, but she was definitely aware of mental health, and she totally endeared the Genesis Club community. And then, of course, how many people follow? We had the elections in Worcester the other day, right? District 5 Councilor won, and how many people actually show up and vote, right?
Very few. In a preliminary, very few.
Very few. You probably, I don't even want to go look. you know. But there was some people that I listened to on the radio every day. I listened to AM radio every day. I listened to all the Worcester talk, all the local stuff. Mayor Joe Petty is on every morning on local radio stations. And Augustus, whether it's school system, COVID, what will you? But, you know, as they were talking, I was thinking about this issue about the superintendent. You know, if you want to not renew the contract for Maureen Benenda, which they came out and said, and actually that was brewing, what? That was brewing, she wanted more years.
She wanted 1 year. She wanted a 1 year extension.
She wanted a 1 year extension, right? So,
yep.
I mean, was she doing that terrible of a job that...
Well, look, and I think that's where the controversy comes from. And you know, I should say before we get too deep into this that I am actually technically related to Maureen. My cousin was Johnny Benenda, so I am related to the Benendas. So full disclosure. And I worked with Maureen on other projects from previous work lives. So let me start by prefacing that.
That's great. That's great.
So, but the reality is, what's frustrating about this is that just last year for her reviews, every one of the school committee members, with the exception of Tracy, because Tracy has an axe to grind, it seems, against
no doubt about that. Yep.
And I think part of that was, again, I can't get in Tracy's head. She actually used to be one of my neighbors. I can't get into her head, but I think she was still sour because she was a big supporter of Melinda Boone. And I think that she lost her last school committee race in part because there was kind of an upheaval against Melinda Boone in the school department, and she kind of got kind of swept up with that. Mm-hmm. So I think there was some bitter feelings towards Maureen, and I don't think Tracy's ever really kind of come down off of that. But my point being with that is, Tracy gave her, less than glowing reviews, which is fine. That's her prerogative. Mm-hmm. The problem I have is that Joe Petty and most of the other, if not Jack Foley, had a few, hits, but for the most part, Maureen was found to be proficient or above average in all her scores last year.
Right.
So how does it go from that? How do you say on her last review she's proficient and above average, and then try to take her out to the woodshed at 11:59, right on the eve of a school committee election year? They're doing it dirty, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't pass the smell test, and it just plain sucks, if you ask me.
It does, and I'm glad you put it that way, because that's where as a 58-year-old guy, I was born in Worcester. I do not live in Worcester now, but I'm in Worcester every day. I know every street, crack, and sidewalk in that damn city as much as I can. But it reminded me of like the infighting, when the mall had to come down, and the blame game, and I think a city like Worcester that's trying to position itself, and I will say that it still has a long way to go, as a desirable place to live. If you have all this infighting going on in the school system, and I'm thinking about relocating my family to Worcester, maybe up in Green Hill Park and the Burkhold area or whatever, the first thing you're doing is looking at the school district, and you go, wow, these guys can't get their heads out of their butt. What's going on here? How? And it may not even affect the quality of education on a daily level of your child, but indirectly it does, because it relates to funding, the quality of onboarding teachers, especially young teachers that actually want to teach, as opposed to the old hacks that that are in the Worcester public school system or any school system. I worked in a school system for 9 months. I couldn't wait to get out of there. The teachers were just like, they were like, give me a break. You know,
10 years are the worst thing that could have happened to public schools, is giving teachers tenure. That was, and I know all my union friends are going to hit me on that, but it's true. I think giving teachers tenure in the public school system is a very dangerous thing, because honestly, after a while, you do become numb to it, and you do kind of lose that passion and that flair that at one time you might have had when you were in your early 20s or mid-30s.
well, exactly. In the school system I worked in, which was not in Massachusetts, but I only did it as a career coach for 9 months for the kids grades 9 through 12. But when I used to go to lunch in the teacher's lounge, you know, I'd walk in there. There was, you know, one guy was in his robe smoking a pipe. He had slippers on. He said, "I'm
You're not thinking
tenured."
about me there for a second, because that's my plan for the evening.
Yeah, he had scotch. He said, "Ken, screw these, you know, kids that want to learn. You know, have a scotch, man." I'm like, "Dude, don't you have to teach science in 40 minutes?" He's like, "Oh yeah, but they don't want to learn anyway, you know." So I totally, I'm being sarcastic, but you know, I mean, actually, maybe it's just a testament to the American school systems, how we're so. What I learned about the American school system when I worked in a school, and I did not realize this, was that they were so outdated, that they were so they were just priming people for the workplace. They were actually Voc schools. You know, your 4-room schoolhouse, the bells that would ring, go to break. They were preparing you for the factories, and that this is going to be your life. You know, bang, bang, bang. Bell rings. You go back to work. You go to school. And I when I hear this infighting with Worcester and trying to be a progressive city and trying to get the talented teachers that we need to teach, you know, not just to the MCAS, but to keep up with the world. America's education system compared to the world is really like in the 47th or whatever in certain math, geometry, whatever it is. You know,
it's all the STEM. You know, China has a much better STEM program in their public schools. So does Japan. So do all these countries that are outdoing us, because their STEM programs are so much better than ours. So kids are learning science, math, and technologies, whereas, you know, we're learning English and, you know, women's studies and, you know, and all these things. And I think that's part of it. And like you said, with the infighting, it's not a healthy school system right now. You know, you don't have a good balance in Worcester right now.
Mm-hmm. Which is a shame. And you know, you can build all the, you know, the parks you want and things like that. You know, we're not the only ones. I mean, there's so many. I mean, Worcester in New England is so fortunate to be able to actually survive as an older manufacturing center, whether it was steel, you know, whether it was textiles. I look at cities like Lawrence and Lowell and, you know, all these Boston barons that put those towns and cities together back in the 1800s. Worcester was able to actually be kind of its own. And that maybe that's what Worcester is used to. Every time they like rely on their own people, they feel like they're disappointed. So they have to get onto this national search of, you know, no, we can't rely on our own people that are born and bred here in Worcester. We need to go on a national search to find a superintendent of schools.
Right.
Do we really? I mean, really?
Right. Well, one of the things about, you know, and again, honestly, a lot of it's geography too. You know, Lawrence is habitually screwed because most of the developable land right now in Lawrence is all old brownfields, which are going to cost, you know, billions of dollars to fix. There's just no room to develop in Lawrence, and Lowell's just too far north. Worcester lucked out because it's so centrally located to New York, Hartford, Providence, Boston, that, you know, Worcester got a huge boost. Because who knows, if Worcester was in the same geographical range as, you know, Lowell, you know, maybe we wouldn't be where we are today. But going back to the comments by, you know, Tracy about, you know, nobody in the public school system right now has the ability to be superintendent. Even if you think that, that's not something you should say
exactly
out loud.
Right.
It's like that old saying. It's like you're saying the quiet part out loud. you can think it if you want, because there are probably people who think that. And you know what? Who knows? Maybe she's right. But at the end of the day, you don't say it out loud because it's just an antagonistic statement that's meant to rile people up. And I don't really understand why we need to antagonize the other side and turn into this like tribal warfare when it comes to selecting a superintendent. Again, regardless of how you feel about how Maureen is done as superintendent, you know, she did guide the city of Worcester through, you know, a once in a lifetime pandemic. I mean, that's
very good. Absolutely right.
I mean, it's a budget that's over $400 million. You know, there are over 30 elementary schools. There's 8 high schools and 4 middle schools. You know, it's a lot of kids that she's overseeing. And, you know, whether for better or worse, she navigated the storm, and she should have at least been given that 1-year extension to stabilize everything post-COVID.
Absolutely.
And now, what are we going to get for a superintendent search? I mean, you know, we got our last superintendent, Melinda Boone, who was from, again, Norfolk, Virginia. There was a learning curve for her about learning about Worcester. And even at the end, you know, excluding the scandals, because, you know, we do know about, you know, her communication and the two employees of the public school system who were caught with child porn that she tried to bury, so nobody would find out. But she was always known as aloof. You know, she was known as an aloof bureaucrat that never really fit into Worcester. You know, she would go out and meet some people, but she was often known as really absentee, not there, kind of a technocrat, and not interested in kind of the day-to-day, you know, coming and goings of the individual schools, which led to a lot of issues at North High. I mean, if you remember, you know, before the scandal about the child porn, the big thing for her was, you know, the violence at North High, where you had, you know, kids coming in with guns and knives and stabbing, and I think there were 2 staff members who had to be taken out in ambulances because they were stabbed by students. It was a really bad look, and she had no answer for it, and she didn't want to have an answer for it. When the check came, she just didn't have the cash to pay the bill, and so she ran back to Norfolk because the writing was on the wall that the city was kind of turning against her a little bit at that point in time.
Which actually, you know, speaks to what she came from. You know, it's almost like that was normal.
Well, if you remember correctly, one of the big kind of holdups on her original contract was that she was involved, although she was not involved directly, but there was a big test cheating scandal in Norfolk where they were pumping up scores on standardized testing.
Yep.
And, you know, it's, you know, whether or not you did it or not, or directly responsible, it happened under you. You know, if one of your employees is stealing money, you're responsible at the end of the day. You're the supervisor. You should know. Right. And if you don't know, that's almost just as bad because, you know, ignorance versus corruption. I don't know what. Sometimes it's worse. You know, if you're too blind to see people under you, you know, cheating, you know, well, that's a problem too.
Exactly. I mean, everything you're saying, Peter, actually is spot on, man. You're dead on, and so I actually, what are we looking at? I mean, we had the elections in Worcester. We know that the mayor and things like that is. I think the race in Boston. People are asking me today about the race in Boston. I'm like, you know, Boston's 50 miles away. The mayor of Boston doesn't really affect my life, but I do like the fact that we're not, you know, we didn't have the old Italian guy and the old Irish guy in the race this year in Boston. I think the diversity is great, and I think Worcester could certainly benefit from that. And you know, and maybe we shouldn't be looking for a superintendent that. I mean, we're so parochial in Worcester, and we're so like old-fashioned. We're looking for that puritanical nose to the, now kids, you pay attention. Maybe we need some younger influence, if you will, and to be a superintendent, right? Maybe we need someone that's 30 years old, right? But how would the city council embrace that? I mean, the city council almost like they want to get someone that looks like them, and some of those guys have been there for friggin' years, right? We need new blood in the Worcester public school system. We need someone who's going to fight for the dollars that a growing community needs, and to improve the school system, its safety. We're removing the SRO folks, right? We're removing officers from the schools. What's that going to mean? We just had what was it? Was it at North High, or I forget? Was it when? It was just a couple of days ago where 3 youths attacked the police, the principal of a public school system.
Right, and I mean this is where kind of the politics kind of got into it, because even though we don't really know what a lot of what Joe Petty's motivation is regarding Maureen, it seems like a lot of this started due to police presence in schools. There have been a faction of the city council and the school committee that's been very anti-police in schools. I've always kind of been ambivalent either way. I could care less. I do see the benefit of having a cop in the school. At the same time, it is a school. You generally think it's a safe place, but again, I've never been strong for a cop or strong against a cop. And Maureen, from what I've read and my conversations with people, has been kind of the same. She's not a big, we have to have a cop in the school, but she's at this point reluctant due to the increase in gun violence around the Worcester public schools to have the cops removed. And I think in Worcester, the politics of Worcester, because there is a little bit of a machine. It's not the coolest. It's not like a Tammany Hall machine. It's kind of actually like a losers club type of a political machine. It's like a Tammany Hall light. But there are a set group of voters who, again, when you have a voter turnout hovering around 7%, if you have a block of people who vote what people tell them to, 7% and 5% votes, then they win. I mean, between you and me, one of us was stupid enough to once upon a time run for city council in Worcester. I lost by 2%. But you look at it, and there's an old adage that the only thing harder than getting elected in the city of Worcester for city council is to lose a city council race, because people just don't vote incumbents out.
Dude, I love it, man. I love it. And you know what we're gonna do right now is that we've come to the close of the video, and I just want to get your final thoughts on whatever you want to talk about. But I think the conversation's been great. I do not want to say that the city of Worcester is screwed by any means. I mean, we've had, and we're not alone in this. I mean, every municipality struggles with its educational systems. They cost billions a year to fund. We have to keep our kids safe. We've got kids that, are under 12 years old wearing a gosh dang mask every day to school. I mean, these are confusing times. I think this is a time right now for a superintendent to come in that's more grassroots in any school system and pay attention to each school and, put a little empathy into the job. And when I hear Worcester talking right now about kicking this one out, bringing this one in, where are the kids in all this? We don't want to lose a generation, especially mental health wise. There are studies coming out right now with kids that are wearing masks. They can't understand facial expressions, and this has become their normal, and they're going to have some post-traumatic stress disorders from this, that may not rear its ugly head for years and years, that will show up in their latent years in the Worcester Public Schools. So I think we need a kinder, gentler city council, and let's get someone in that's a superintendent that is not a bureaucrat. And I would go for local any day as opposed to some national search that wants to grab some superintendent from New Mexico that has no goddamn idea about what it's like to be in Worcester. You know, those are my closing. Those are my closing arguments. But what do you say?
No, I mean, I agree. I think Worcester is a unique city. It's a city where people act like they're in a small town, and it's small town politics in a big city. And I think it takes too long to kind of familiarize yourself and acclimate yourself to that climate. I mean, the average superintendent is in their job for 3.18 years. You know, Maureen's going to be finishing, I think, her 4th year, and Melinda Boone was here for 6 years.
Right.
So you have superintendents who have just gone over the average. I just want to make sure that when we do pick a superintendent, it's a superintendent who's picked because they have a vision for the city and the city's public schools. It's not just check off a block. It's not just to appease, racial or socioeconomic. You know, I want what's best for the school district, and I want a superintendent who has a vision. Which
means that that knows that the taxpayers are funding the school system, which means that we're paying for that, which means that we are customers, okay? And our kids are not, should be privy to the tax dollars that, families are paying. Right, to sustain the school system, friggin' period. So that all means that all roads lead to the K through 12 customers or consumers.
Right. I mean, the next superintendent is going to single-handedly oversee the construction of the new Doherty, the construction of the new Burncoat High School,
yep.
Amongst other things, and eventually probably a new South High School. So whoever it is going to be there for probably 3 brand new high schools. And, again, our Worcester Public Schools have always been, comparatively to other public schools in the state, pretty damn good. I mean, you're never going to have the ratio, the teacher-to-student ratio and the AP programs as suppose, Algonquin or Nipmuc or any of those schools. Mm-hmm. But, you do have an opportunity here because we are in a pretty good spot. But I worry that the school committee is going to potentially muff this up by being so focused on non sequitur qualifications that it's going to come at a cost to the students of the public schools.
Right. So let's hope that doesn't happen. So Peter K., great talking to you as always, man. I know you're on the road. We're going to let you go. And so let's just say this, man. Let's hope the best for Worcester. Let's hope for the best maybe for the Red Sox. But we'll see you next year with that.
Blue Jays.
Let's go Blue Jays. You know what? Hey, I always go in sports for the team who wants it the most, right? And there's nothing like baseball playoffs that the best team will show you, certainly, whether you like them or not, they'll show you how they're going to win and why they won, right?
Yep.
All right, brother.
I think our next show we'll be able to do a playoff preview and probably see if the Patriots postmortem of their season when they lose week 4. So who knows?
You're right. That's another show coming up, guys. All right, Peter. So we'll be talking. We'll be talking to you soon, my friend.
Take care, man.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Awesome, Peter K here. He is the dude, man. Love my videos and live feeds with the K-Man, Peter Cush. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. We'll see you next time on Cities and Suburbs. Welcome aboard. Have a good night.